in front of his interrogators, he admitted to every single act and every single deed, and he took the blame for everything. Now, before being taken to the court for trial, and this was his second imprisonment now. He was released after 10 years, and then again immediately afterwards he was imprisoned. The second trial of Sayid Qutb. He was put in prison before the trial, and it was said that before being taken to the court, like I said, his nephew Rif'at was killed directly in front of him. He was beaten to death in front of Sayid Qutb. Zainab al-Ghazali, she also reports, she was a female member of the Ikhwan, who was also very, beaten in prison. She reports that she went to go to relieve herself, go to the toilet, and then she passed by an area in which Sayid Qutb, was being beaten. And then there was a blanket, there was like a cloth, so that he couldn't see outside. And that cloth, some wind came and it raised the cloth, and Sayid Qutb, he caught sight of Zainab al-Ghazali. And then the prison guard, they said, "Oh look, you raised this cloth yourself." Okay, and they beat him and they whipped him and they whipped him. And she said that, "I was coming back from the toilet and I still heard them beating him, and he was saying that I had no communication with her, I had no plans to talk to her, and they were still beating him." And then it was said that while the doctors of Sayid Qutb, because of his condition, his weak lungs, they were bleeding, they had collapsed at one stage. They said, "Look, don't make this man run. Right? When you make him go from place to place, don't make him run." But the prison guard, they didn't listen to his advice, and they made Sayid Qutb run from place to place, and they would whip him, say, "Run, run, run." Okay, and in one of those incidences, he ran, and there on the spot he had a heart attack. Yeah, and he was an old man. He was an old man. He had a heart attack. He was now reaching 60 years of age. And then Sayid Qutb, he would sometimes see the rest of the Ikhwanis, they were put in prison, and he would go and he would smile at them. He would smile at them, when he'd see them being tortured, and they would say to him that, "We are being tortured, this is a sign of our torture, this way we have been beaten, this way we have been whipped." And then Sayid Qutb, he would cry and make dua for them. And Sayid Qutb, he knew that if the Ikhwanis, they spoke about their torture to the rest of the people, to the journalists and things, they would be beaten. So Sayid Qutb, he took it upon himself to tell the whole world about the torture that the Ikhwan, faced in that time. And therefore he would be beaten even more and even more. There was the trial of Sayid Qutb. There's a man, very, he was not even a judge. He was a commoner called Fawad Dajawi. This man, Fawad Dajawi, look how much of a coward he was. When he wanted to fight against the Jews in 1956, and the Jews had surrounded him, he joined the Jews against the Muslim brothers. He joined the side of the Jews, and then the Jews let him go. Upon meeting Sayid Qutb in the trial, he was a judge. He was very rude to Sayid Qutb, very rude to him. If you read his account, okay, if any brother knows Arabic, it's in this book, in the whole account of his trial with Sayid Qutb. He was very, very rude to this man. And Sayid Qutb, he would look at Dajawi with such a stare of complete humiliation at this man, and he had no respect for this man Dajawi, that this man Dajawi, he was terrified at the stare and look of Sayid Qutb. And then, just like in the interrogation, Sayid Qutb took the blame of everything. Said, "Yes, I did this, yes we did this, yes we did this, and yes for this reason and for this reason." Accepted everything. And this is all our plans, and yes, you are corrupt and disbelieving regime, and these are our plans. Qutb was sentenced. He didn't know what was going to be his sentence, but he knew that he was going to be executed. He knew that his execution was going to be near. And he wrote letters, from his prison. And I just want to, read short passages of his letters so you know the state of Iman that Sayid Qutb was living at that time from prison. SubhanAllah, I can't find it, brothers. Khair, man, I can't find it. Inshallah, maybe later, inshallah, I'll relate to you the words. They're very moving words, these letters that he wrote, inshallah. Human rights organizations and even world leaders, including Malik Faisal, they said that Sayid Qutb should be pardoned. He should be pardoned, he should release him. Because they realized the brilliance of this man. And when Malik Faisal, the king of Saudi Arabia, asked for the execution to be lifted, Then Abdul Nasir, he became very angry, and he said, we're going to make the execution happen the next day, in the morning of the Fajr of the next day. And then throughout that night, Sayid Qutb, he was his sister was sent to Sayid Qutb. His sister Hamida, she was sent to Sayid Qutb to try and tell him to seek pardon from Abdul Nasir and all that he did. Okay, it was said to him, look, all you have to say is that it wasn't you that were in charge of all this that happened. That all these ideas of revolution and all these plans, this Ikhwan, say some other organization, it was their idea, not the idea of Ikhwan. That's all you have to say. And Sayid Qutb, he said, in response to this, والله لو كان هذا الكلام صحيحا لقلته ولما استطاعت قوة على وجه الأرض أن تمنعني من قولي. Okay, that if this was the truth, that it was some other organization that had planned all this and I had nothing to do with this, if this was true, okay, I would have said it, but this is not the truth. This is not the truth. And he said, ولكنه لم يحدث. This is not the way it happened. The way it happened is the way I've said it to you in the trial. Okay, وإني لا أقول كذبا أبدا. I will not ever say a lie ever. And so they tried many times to go to Sayid Qutb and seek pardon from Sayid Qutb, rahmatullahi alayhi. And then Sayid Qutb had a few things to say to his sister. He said, إن رأيت الوالد المرشد حسن حديبي فبلغيه عن السلام وقولي له لقد تحمل السيد أقصى ما يحتمله بشر حتى لا تمس بأدنى سوء. He said, because what has happened, Sayid Qutb was in charge of this underground organization, but Hassan Hudaybi was still really in charge of the whole of Ikhwan, and he didn't want to put any blame on him. He wanted to keep this organization still alive, and therefore he took all the blame. And he said, if you see Hassan Hudaybi, the murshid of Ikhwan, and say to him salam, and say to him that Sayid Qutb has taken as much punishment that a human can suffer. As much punishment as a human can suffer, and the reason for this is that so that you and the organization as a whole doesn't suffer at all. And then they came to him again at the last points before he was to be executed. They said, oh Sayyid, just say I'm sorry for what I did. Just say sorry. I'm sorry for what I did. And Sayid Qutb, he said, لن أعتذر عن العمل مع الله. I will never seek any excuse for work for the sake of Allah. I make no excuses for this. This is why I did this. I know why I did this, and I know that with which conviction I did this with. I make no excuses. And when he said to him to write a few words to Abdul Nasir saying, I'm sorry and please, I didn't mean what I was doing. Just write a few words to Abdul Nasir. Listen to what he said. He said, إن أصبع السبابة الذي يشهد لله بالوحدانية في الصلاة ليرفض أن يكتب حرفا يقر به حكم الطاغية. He said, indeed, this finger, which it witnesses the oneness of Allah in salah, when you say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, this finger, it refuses to admit anything that this hukm al-taghi has done, this oppressive regime. It refuses to agree on anything of this oppressive regime. It has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with it. And therefore, Sayid Qutb, he was taken to the place of his execution. And when he was taken to the place of his execution, everybody saw him smiling. He had a beaming smile on his face. He was happy, he was smiling, he was waving to the prison guards, and he was very, very happy. Okay, and in one of the letters that I said I would read inshallah, he said, I am waiting for this moment. He says, as I remember, that I am living a life I have never ever lived before. I am feeling the true meaning of Iman. I fully understand, the Aqidah as it's meant to be understood. I fully understand this religion. More than ever before, with a clear vision. And I'm waiting for my Shahada. And I've never ever lived a life better than this life that he was living. Those moments just before his execution. He has had a beaming face on his, and this face of his was captured on TV and by the cameras. He was very happy to go and meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what he was waiting for. Because he realized that if somebody works for the sake of Allah, that is going to be his end. That the end result is going to be shahada. He knew this was the reality of life. And he was expecting it. And then Sayid Qutb on the 29th of August 1966, okay, with Abdul Fattah Ismail and Muhammad Yusuf Hawash, they were also members of Ikhwan, they were all hanged. Rahmatullah alayhim, rahmatan wasi'ah. And on that night, the Ikhwan in their prisons, and it was Jumu'ah, in the prison they read the surah, وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ بَنِي آدَمَ بِالْحَقِّ إِذْ قَرَّبَ قُرْبَانًا فَتُقُبِّلَ مِنْ أَحَدِهِمَا وَلَمْ يُتَقَبَّلْ مِنَ الْآخَرِ قَالَ